Our story today begins in the soft hush of midnight. An old lab waits tucked away on a quiet New York street. Not far from Broadway, but far enough for silence to settle like dust. Inside, the air smells faintly of copper and ozone. And in the center of it all, standing still and calm, is a tall man in a dark suit. Nikola Tesla. His hands are steady, his eyes soft with thought, and all around him hums. Not noise, no. It's the low musical hum of his inventions. Electric arcs crackle gently from the coils, pulsing like fireflies in slow motion. You might expect chaos, sparks, movement, heat, but instead, everything feels patient, measured, almost peaceful. Our story today begins here, in Tesla's Midnight Lab, where dreams are shaped not in sunlight, but in silence. A soft rain taps at the glass barely heard beneath the slow, looping current of energy cycling through a nearby coil. Tesla steps closer. He doesn't flinch as a spark jumps. He knows this rhythm well. It's the lullaby of his thoughts. Beside him, on the windowsill, a pigeon sleeps. Yes, a pigeon. You may not know this, but Tesla, brilliant inventor of alternating current and radio, had a deep affection for birds, especially pigeons. They brought him peace. In a life filled with ideas, discoveries, and endless struggle, pigeons gave him stillness. And so they stayed, perched on windows, cooing softly, resting their heads under their wings, while Tesla worked beneath them like a quiet sorcerer. Tonight, he's been trying something new, an idea to transmit power wireless through the air lighting lamps from miles away. It sounds impossible. But to Tesla, impossible is just the beginning of quiet curiosity. The lamp in the corner, cold and untouched, sits on a wooden table beside old blueprints and a tea-stained notebook. Tesla raises a hand, flicks a small switch. A low, deep pulse floods the air. The filament inside the lamp flutters, once, twice, and then it glows. No wires, no contact, just current, moving invisibly. A smile flickers at the corner of Tesla's mouth. Not triumph, but something quieter. Like the moment a wave finally reaches shore. Did you know? Tesla was born in 1856 during a lightning storm. The midwife said it was a bad omen, but his mother, softly and simply, said, "No, this child will be a child of light." She was right. He would go on to dream of lighting the world, not just with electricity, but with wonder. He believed energy could be shared freely. He imagined towers taller than the sky, sending power to every home. For nothing. But people didn't always understand him. He worked alone, often at night, because nighttime was quieter. Ideas could breathe in the dark. he would pace the room, talking to himself in 3 languages: Croatian, German, English. Not out of madness, but memory. He remembered things exactly as he saw them. If he designed something in his mind, he didn't need to build a model. He could see every screw, every turn of copper, every vibration of sound. He once said he could see flashes of light behind his eyes, like blue fire in the corners of thought. And sometimes, he said, the ideas whispered first, before they appeared. Now, in the midnight lab, the air grows warmer. The coils hum lower. The rain outside has softened to mist. Tesla takes off his coat and drapes it gently over the back of a chair. He moves to a tall shelf and selects a worn book, Plutarch's Livsa, favorite from his youth. He reads a line or 2 aloud. His voice is barely above a breath, measured, soft. He closes the book and walks back to the lamp, still glowing, still silent. The pigeon coos gently from the windowsill. Tesla smiles again and writes something in his notebook. Success, but quiet, it's refining. Beautiful, though. No one sees this moment but him. No applause, no newspaper headline, no money, just the gentle hum of success alone in the dark. You may not know this, but Tesla worked with Thomas Edison once, and though Edison paid him poorly and dismissed many of his ideas, Tesla never spoke of it with anger. He simply moved on, kept building, kept imagining. He once walked 10 miles a day through Central Park to feed his favorite birds. Some would land on his shoulder. Others would circle overhead. And when they left, he would return to his room at the New Yorker hotel, where he lived for over a decade, alone with his notes and his thoughts. It was here, at night, that he would dream the loudest. But in the lab, he dreamed with his hands. And now, as the hour grows late, he lowers the lights one by one. He moves slowly, with grace, like a violinist putting away his instrument after a long, gentle concert. The last switch clicks. Darkness falls. Steady glow of the soft, steady glow of the lamp he lit without touching. It remains a little monument to quiet genius and the power of the invisible. You may rest now. Tesla has. He leans back in his old wooden chair, closes his eyes. The rain has stopped. The pigeon sleeps on, and somewhere far beyond the lab, a street light flickers to life, and no one quite knows why, but you do, because you've seen the midnight lab, and you've heard its whisper. The lab quiets now, but the mind inside it is far from still. Tesla leans forward, elbows on the table, fingertips pressed together. The lamp still glows faintly beside his notebook. He's thinking about frequencies, resonance, power flowing not in wires, but through air. Around him, sketches of his Wardenclyffe Tower lie rolled and pinned, pages curling like old petals. That was the dream, after all, to beam energy through the sky itself. Free electricity for all. But dreams are delicate things, especially in a world ruled by money and patents. Tesla was not a businessman. He was something older, a kind of modern mystic channeling the invisible forces of nature, not to control them, but to understand them. When Tesla walked through New York, he rarely looked people in the eye. It wasn't rudeness, it was protection. His mind was crowded with sounds and visions most people could never see. Even walking down Fifth Avenue, he could recall in perfect clarity the layout of a generator he built 10 years earlier in Budapest. He remembered the size of each bolt, the sound the gears made under stress, and the flicker of the light it powered. His thoughts were architectural. He built blueprints in his mind the way poets form verses slowly, precisely, emotionally. He once told a journalist that he could hear thunder before it appeared, not from the clouds, but from the harmonics of pressure in the air. It wasn't magic, it was sensitivity. He could hear electricity hum through walls, smell ionization in a room. He couldn't stand jewelry's sparkle disturbed. His focus hand had an aversion to touching hair or round objects. These were not quirks, but signs of a mind that noticed too much, too fast. Tonight, in his lab, Tesla writes 3 numbers across a page. They are 3, 6, and 9. He circles them once, underlines twice, then stares. Many years later, people would obsess over this the Tesla code. They'd call it but for him. It wasn't mystery. It was pattern. Nature, he believed, was written in these rhythms. The geometry of waves, the mathematics of energy, the pulse of the universe, hidden in repetition. If you understood vibration, you could understand everything. Tesla's lab was his cathedral, not for prayer, but for devotion. Every coil and capacitor had its place. The copper wires gleamed like veins. He dusted each instrument by hand, not because he feared contamination, but because he respected the tools. Even the chalkboard carried his signature neatness, no stray marks. It was a clean field where thought could stretch out like morning light on empty floorboards. Some nights, visitors came, investors, fellow engineers, skeptics. But tonight, like many, he is alone. Solitude never frightened him. It allowed ideas to arrive fully formed. When he first imagined the AC motor, it came to him during a walk. The design appeared in the air before him, rotating in place, every part clear. He sketched it in the dirt with a stick. Others had tried to create such a thing with countless prototypes. He sips water he always drank large quantities in, turns back to a small wooden box near the far bench. Inside, he's placed a tiny vacuum tube. He adjusts the current, and a halo of blue flares around it. Not light bulb yellow, not fire orange, but something ghostlier. He watches in silence. It doesn't impress anyone anymore, but when he first discovered it, it felt like catching a piece of the aurora borealis in glass. The pigeon shifts on the sill. Tesla glances at it, eyes soft. He once said he loved one pigeon more than anything else in his life. When it died, he claimed a light left his heart. He said the bird would visit him daily, and once glowing light came from its eyes. That's what he said. Whether you believe him or not is irrelevant. He believed it. And in that, you find the truth of who he was. Tesla wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing harmony. A world in balance. A world where power flowed like water and lit up entire cities without wires. A world where machines needed no fuel, just the Earth's natural vibration. He even imagined transmitting thoughts wirelessly. A century later, we'd call it Wi-Fi, but he never saw it fully realized. The world moved on without him. Still, his fingers traced the outline of the small device on the table, and for a second, the lab glows brighter, like it knows it's being seen. The rain begins softly outside, a quiet tapping rhythm on the long vertical windows, barely enough to disturb the thin film of street soot clinging to the glass. Tesla doesn't flinch. He's always liked storms. A boy in Smiljan. He was born during one lightning, cracking above the wooden roof beams as the midwife wrapped him in blankets. He will be a child of darkness, someone whispered. His mother replied, no, of light. Whether coincidence or destiny, Nikola grew into both. He stands now beside one of his larger coils, tall as a man and surrounded by glass insulators. He adjusts the terminal by half an inch. Woewei's exact hand, the air around him crackles with a soft charge. Not enough to sting, just to raise the hairs on his arms. In a flash, he pulls the switch. Purple forks of plasma erupt from the coil's crown, dancing in arcs that hiss like whispers. For a moment, he closes his eyes. The sound is like music static in chorus. To anyone else, it's chaos. To Tesla, it's the voice of energy itself. He moves like a conductor through the lab, adjusting knobs, repositioning contacts, carefully measuring the distance between nodes. Everything here was built by hand or to his design. He once said he could see a machine running in his mind for years before testing it physically. If a flaw emerged, he'd correct it in the model inside his thoughts, then start again. He believed imagination, when disciplined, was more precise than any drafting table. That's what he's doing now. Not building something, but perfecting it. Tonight's experiment isn't for show. He's tuning the transmitter. It's not for light, not for heat, but for resonance. The earth itself has a frequency. He believes a musical hum beneath all things. If he can match it, even briefly, he could send a signal anywhere on the planet. No towers, no wires. Just the trembling of tuned vibration. He's sure it can work, but it must be exact. The idea came to him long ago. Walking in Central Park, he carried breadcrumbs in one pocket for pigeons and a notebook in the other. The moment struck like lightning how vibration connects all matter. The Earth's crust, the atmosphere, even our own bones. He scribbled formulas on the park bench with the nub of a pencil. Later, he built a small oscillator that shook his entire building. The police were called. He pretended not to know why. Back in the lab, Tesla adjusts the main dial. The hum deepens. A low, chest-warming frequency fills the room, not loud, just present, like a feeling in your ribs. Tools tremble slightly on the shelves. Nothing breaks, but it's working. The table vibrates. A metal washer dances in place. He smiles faintly. This is what he wants. Not noise, not fire. Just the proof that nature listens and answers. It's nearly 3 a.m. now. The city outside has quieted to its lowest breath. Horse-drawn carriages are gone. Street lamps glow like little moons in the mist. Only a few windows remain lit in the tall, narrow buildings. New York is asleep, but not Tesla. His hours are reversed. He wakes with dusk, works through night, and rests when the world begins again. He claims he needs only 2 hours of sleep, and sometimes not even that. A quiet knock comes from the back entrance. He doesn't answer. It's likely a messenger or a reporter. He's learned to ignore them when in flow. He can't be pulled from the signal now. Every distraction is a ripple, and he's looking for stillness. He waits. The knock fades. The rain continues. A note sits on his desk, scribbled hours ago. A quote: "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." He didn't write it for anyone. Just to remind himself, he believes it more than anything else. Not belief like religion, but like gravity. Something that exists, whether you think about it or not. Tesla leans back now, eyes half closed. The transmitter hums gently beside him. He reaches out not to touch it, but to feel it. The way one might extend a hand to the ocean, not to grab, but to greet. The light from the plasma coil dims slowly. Not because it's failing, but because he's letting it rest. The lab glows in blue shadows. The pigeon coos once more, then settles. All is still. Tesla doesn't sleep not like others do. He rests in slivers, in thought, in moments between pulses of voltage and theory. Tonight, though, he sits for longer than usual. The experiment is still fresh in his mind, but he lets it settle like a dusting of snow on a quiet path. The Coils hum still lingers in his ears, but softer now, like a memory of thunder far away. The room is warm with residual energy, but Tesla still draws his coat tighter. A long gray woolen garment, worn at the cuffs, always buttoned just so. He keeps a spare in his closet, nearly identical. He doesn't like change in clothes. He once believed it wasted mental energy. Instead, he devotes every waking second to refinement, thought, of mechanism, of meaning. On the workbench beside him lies a small glass bulb inside it, a coil of wire glowing faintly. No wires lead to it. The light comes from the air, from resonance. It's an invention many don't yet understand, but he sees it clearly. A world lit without cords, energy flowing through the atmosphere, like sound, like scent, invisible, everywhere. He knows this is possible. What people now call impossible, he just calls unfinished. Outside the window, dawn tiptoes into the skyline. The first gray brushstrokes appear behind the tall buildings of Manhattan, soft and tentative. Tesla doesn't look up. He already knows. His mind is turning toward another idea, motor with no commutator, a magnetic field that rotates itself. He's seen it in his dreams, drawn it thousands of times. It will come. All of it will. There's a notebook on the floor, dropped in haste earlier. He leans down and retrieves it. The pages are filled formulas, diagrams, fragments of poems in Serbian. Tesla's mind is a storm and a map. Some notes are for inventions he hasn't spoken of yet. Some are reminders. Pigeons, wait for me. Another, don't forget the copper bolts in drawer 2. In the corner of the lab, a small pile of mechanical parts sits under a draped cloth. It's a failed prototypes. Some say the basis for a death ray, though Tesla never called it that. He disliked war, hated conflict. If he built something powerful, it was always to prevent violence. His vision was never of destruction, but of balanced equilibrium through overwhelming force, never used. He believed in peace, in harmony, in silence. A pigeon flutters through the open transom above the door. It's a pure white one, with iridescent eyes and soft gray feet. She lands beside him, calm. He doesn't startle. He offers a few sunflower seeds from a drawer. She accepts. Her feathers are immaculate. This one has visited before he thinks of her as special. He once told a friend he loved a pigeon, not romantically, not strangely, but truly. She needed him, and he needed her. The bird coos and pecks gently. Tesla smiles. His eyes, tired but kind, reflect the filament glow of his wireless lamp. This moment, just him, the bird, and a world not yet ready for what he has built feels more complete than any award ever did. He never cared for medals. He once returned one sent by a foreign government, asking instead for help funding his tower. Ah, the tower to cliff. Still half constructed, still waiting out on Long Island. His great dream, a global transmitter for free wireless electricity. The project had begun with promise, but funding slowed. Investors didn't see the future the way he did. They wanted profit. He wanted possibility. And so, the tower sleeps. For now. But Tesla hasn't given up. Not really. Even as his finances tighten, even as newspapers forget his name in favor of newer ones, he remains quietly convinced. The laws of physics haven't changed. Only the world's attention has. The pigeon nuzzles his hand once, then flutters back up to the windowsill. Outside, the morning light strengthens. The rain has stopped. The air smells clean, metallic, faintly of ozone from the night's experiments. A new day has arrived, but Tesla does not rush to meet it. Instead, he stands slowly, moves to the far end of the lab, pulls out a drawer. Inside, dozens of small sketches, new turbine designs, a simplified transformer, even a curious spiral antenna, each one drawn in his hand quick, but exact. He thumbs through them, sets aside a few for revisiting. These are not yet ready, but they will be. He is always ahead of time, and time is always catching up. From the same drawer, he removes a single sheet. An idea still unshared. A machine for capturing thoughts' brainwaves translated to images he imagines. Too early, perhaps, but interesting. He smiles again, folds it carefully, and slips it back. A soft bell chimes in the distance, morning bells from the church nearby. Tesla hears them, barely through the hum of the city returning to life. But he does not rush. He lights a small oil lamp, not for need, but for comfort. The warm flicker casts golden shadows across the lab's metal and glass. And then he begins again. Tesla walks slowly to the central table, his footsteps light, almost floating. On the table rests a long copper tube, wound with wire, the heart of a new kind of oscillator. Not a loud one. Not tonight. But he fingers the edge of the tuning dial, remembering the time he created an earthquake. It was a small test. A simple oscillator fixed to a support beam in a New York building. At the right frequency, the whole structure began to shiver. Glass cracked. People fled. Tesla calmly broke the device with a hammer. Later, he would say that with the right frequency, even the Empire State Building could be brought down, not with force, but with resonance. Not with violence, but with harmony disrupted. He never built it again. Instead, he sought the opposite resonance that heals, that aligns. His later notebooks are filled with notes on vibration therapy, on electromagnetic healing. Strange, perhaps, but not to him. The body, after all, is electric. He sits again, this time by a smaller coil, the Tesla coil, reduced to a desktop scale. It hums gently as he adjusts it. No sparks fly tonight. Just the steady, quiet rhythm of alternating current pulsing invisibly through the air. A lamp across the room glows faintly in response. No wires needed. It's not a trick. It's the future. He remembers the first time he showed it publicly. In St. Louis, he stood on stage, holding a tube in his hand, glowing from nothing. People gasped, applauded, but few understood. They called it magic. Tesla never liked that. He believed in wonder, but not in mystery for mystery's sake. Everything could be explained. Given time, he looks at the lamp now. It still glows, still proves something, even if the world isn't looking. The light reminds him of another moment. Colorado Springs, 1899. High altitude, clean air. The perfect place for high voltage experimentation. He built his largest coil, there one that threw lightning over 70 feet long. When it fired, the whole station shook. Lights across town flickered. The earth itself, he believed, resonated. One night, he walked outside during a storm. No equipment running, just him. And as lightning forked across the sky, he felt the energy in his bones, not fear connection. He knew then the planet was alive with a current. That thought never left him. He notes it again now in his journal, almost absently. The earth conductor. He underlines it once, then moves on. There's a kettle by the window, cold now. He doesn't drink much, but sometimes he enjoys warm milk or weak tea. Tonight, he pours a little, adds nothing, and lets it warm on a coil-heated plate. No flame, just magnetism. As it simmers, he walks toward the far wall, lined with letters. So many letters, some from engineers, others from children. Some are praise, some confusion, some demand explanation. A few are angry. A few are desperate for inventions, for money, for answers. But one letter he always keeps apart. It's from his mother, long ago, before he came to America. She wrote in soft ink and careful script, wishing him peace, telling him not to forget to eat, reminding him to keep his socks dry. He touches the edge of the page, just lightly. She was the first inventor he ever knew. Nikola Tesla, a woman with no formal education, but a genius in her own right. She crafted tools by hand, solved domestic problems with elegant homespun devices. He remembers watching her shape metal with nothing but instinct and stubborn grace. From her, he learned precision. From her, patience. He still dreams in her voice sometimes. The tea is ready. He sips it slowly, turning again to the workbench. Night is fully gone now. Day has begun, but the lab remains dim, peaceful, untouched by clocks. This is his world, a place of constant becoming. He takes a blank page, begins to draw. No machinery this time, just shapes, arcs, spirals, fractals, the shapes of energy. He believes the universe has its own languature, geometry of form and flow. These sketches are not blueprints for devices, but ideas, visualizations of potential. They won't be built, not yet, but they matter like dreams. One spiral grows outward on the page. He stares at it a long time. Then, quietly, he whispers, 3, 6, 9. It's a mantra of his. Tesla once said that these numbers held the secret to the universe. No one ever quite understood what he meant. Maybe he didn't mean for them to. Some thoughts, even from a mind like his, aren't ready for words. The pigeon returns. This time, she lands on the desk. He doesn't move. She pecks gently at the paper's edge, curious. Tesla smiles and sets his pencil down. There's something pure about this moment. Man, bird, spiral, silence. He lets the quiet stretch long. He knows the world outside is rushing, but inside this lab, it all flows slower, like current through heavy copper, like memory, like midnight. There is a photograph tucked between the pages of an old notebook. Tesla gently pulls it free of Wardenclyffe Tower, tall and spidery, rising over the coast of Long Island. The unfinished dream, the great transmitter. Wardenclyffe wasn't he just another laboratory? It was Tesla's vision for global wireless communication and free energy. The tower was designed to send electricity through the earth itself. No wires needed, no meter to spin. He imagined homes glowing with light, powered invisibly from the ground below. But the funding ran dry, and the backers grew skeptically, especially J.P. Morgan, who famously asked, "Where do we put the meter?" Tesla never answered that question. He had no answer that would satisfy profit. What he offered was light, not ownership. In the photo, the tower looks sturdy, noble, reaching. But Tesla remembers what it felt like to stand beneath it, too small, too alone. He worked there long past dusk, slept in the building's upper rooms, and wandered the grounds barefoot in the early morning dew. He turns the photo face down, not from shame, but from mourning. A part of him never left that place. He walks to the far window now. It's still dark outside, but the east sky softens. Pale lavender begins to slip over the rooftops. The street below is still. No footsteps yet. Just the echo of distant horses' hooves, faint, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. He watches a moment longer, then returns to the center of the room, where a small device sits under a cloth. He lifts the covering gently. The box beneath is black, polished, and humming faintly. It's a mechanical oscillator, a refinement of the one that caused the infamous earthquake in Manhattan. But this version is quieter, smaller. He made it not to shake walls, but to tune them. He believed buildings, like people, had natural frequencies. Find the resonance, and you find harmony. He places a hand on the machine, not to activate it, but to feel, to listen. In his later years, Tesla became more sensitive to sound. High-pitched whines others couldn't hear made him wince. A thunderclap might cause him to retreat for hours, but soft, subtle vibrations comforted him. He once said he could feel a fly land on a table across the room. So now, as the oscillator hums softly, he closes his eyes and lets his mind drift into the pattern. He thinks of Vienna, where he once studied physics, of Paris, where he worked for the Continental Edison Company, of the ship voyage to America, where he arrived with 4 cents, a book of poetry, and a head full of ideas. He was robbed on the boat. He was robbed again in New York. And yet he stayed. He worked for Edison at first, offering to improve the company's DC generators. When he did, Edison refused to pay the promised bonus. Tesla left. He dug ditches for a time, not for money, but to fund his own patents. That's where the AC motor began, deep in dirt, in solitude. The memory brings no bitterness now, only quiet pride. He touches the edge of a circuit diagram on the nearby desk. Alternating current, the heart of his legacy. He remembers the night of the war of currents, when AC and DC clashed in public demonstrations. Edison had backed DC, safer, he claimed. Tesla knew otherwise. But fear is a hard opponent. To prove a C's safety, Tesla stood before an audience, letting current pass through his own body lighting lamps, with his fingertips unharmed. A living wire. He remembers the gasp of the crowd. But more than that, he remembers the silence that followed the moment people understood. That moment mattered. He places the oscillator back under the cloth. Enough for now. The pigeons stir again, shifting in the rafters. One coos low. Tesla smiles faintly. He never kept pets exactly. But the birds came to him. Some, he said, he knew by name. One white pigeon in particular stayed with him often. He once wrote, "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman." To some, that sounded odd, but Tesla was never ordinary. He found companionship in presence, not possession. He steps toward the wall of books, not the scientific volumes, those he keeps organized, annotated, mapped, but the poetry shelf, thin, worn spines. Some in Serbo-Croatian, others in German, French, English. He reaches for Goethe. He reads a few lines silently, then aloud, just under his breath, not for show. For alignment, he believes language, when spoken softly, holds charge. That the right phrase can shift the current of thought. The page flutters as a breeze drifts in from the window. Morning, slow and pale, is coming on. He takes a breath, sets the book aside. There's one last device to check before rest. It's not complicated, just a receiver, tuned to pick up lightning strikes across the world. It chirps faintly, a tone like birdsong, every time a bolt touches down somewhere on Earth. He built it to listen, not just to storms, but to rhythm. He believes the world has a pulse. He listens now. A tone chimes. Then another. Far away, Africa, perhaps. Or the South Pacific. Tesla leans in, eyes half closed. It comforts him because it proves something. Connection. He is alone in this lab, but not disconnected. And in this final hour before dawn, that thought is enough. Outside, the world begins to stir, but only faintly. A milk cart rattles on cobbled streets below. The sound is distant, softened by morning fog that drapes the city like a shawl. The gas lamps flicker dimmer now, their flame yielding to the dull blue light of dawn. But Tesla remains inside, lit by his own creation. In one corner of the room stands a tall glass tube, another experiment. It glows faintly, not with flame, but with a cold light, like something captured from the aurora. It's a variant of the Geissler tube, a forerunner of neon lighting. But Tesla's version is different. No electrodes, no wires, just a strange harmony between vacuum and voltage. He discovered that certain gases, when agitated by high-frequency currents, would dance with color. He could make a whole room glow without a single bulb. This, he thought, would be the future clean, wire-free illumination. And yet, it never took hold, not because it failed, but because the world wasn't ready. His fingers rest on the base of the tube, and he watches the light ripple like wind over ice. Another invention, another offering, Nearby sits a smaller item, folded neatly inside velvet. He unwraps it with care. Inside is a bladeless turbine. He called it a boundary layer turbine, designed to use the friction of fluid along smooth discs rather than mechanical blades. A revolutionary idea, simple, elegant, efficient, and ignored. The turbine was never mass-produced, but he didn't mind. Tesla believed the future would come not through battles won in boardrooms, but through persistence, through quiet minds refusing to stop dreaming. He gazes again at the turbine, running his hand across its smooth surface. It never whirred in a factory, never earned him fortune, but still exists. And that is enough. He looks again to the window. The pigeons stir again, and one flutters gently down from the rafters to rest near his feet. He doesn't move, just watches. Observes the curve of its wing, the tiny iridescence of its feathers in the morning light. Tesla believed animals, too, had frequencies. The soft pulse of a bird's heart, the rhythm of its wings at all, played into the great symphony of the universe. He once imagined a machine that could interpret thought into vibration, not speech, but intent. An emotional telegraph. He never built it, but he believed it was possible. He rises slowly now, body a little stiff, hands brushing dust from his vest. He does not plan to sleep. He rarely does. 4 hours a night, maybe, more often, too. He called sleep a waste of potential. But he also understood dreams. Many of his greatest ideas came in flashes, visions formed whole in a single breath, down to every gear, every wire. He could hold them in his mind, rotate them, disassemble them, test them without touching a single tool. Some said he hallucinated. Others said he was simply too far ahead. He steps to the mirror now. A thin, silver-rimmed frame, clouded with time. He straightens his collar, runs fingers through his dark, still thick hair, and pauses to look into his own eyes. There's weariness there, but not defeat. He adjusts his cuffs. Quietly satisfied. His life, he knows, will never be fully understood. He has no heirs, no fortune, no monument. But the current flows. The light hums. The towers still rise, though his name is often forgotten in their foundations. He picks up a pencil, returns to his desk, and begins to write. It's not a paper. Not this time. Just notes. Thoughts about resonance, memory, motion, magnetism, light. He does not rush. Each word settles gently into the page, like dust on moonlit glass. Time does not press here. There are no appointments, no telephone rings, no interruptions. Only the soft pulse of something larger. The earth turns, and Tesla writes, somewhere far away, a child wakes to an electric lamp. Somewhere closer, an elevator rises silently in a tall hotel. Somewhere, a generator spins. He does not need applause, only understanding. And perhaps, in time, that too will come. The writing stops, but not the thinking. Tesla leans back, the chair creaking gently beneath him, its legs worn smooth from years of midnight wait. His fingers trace the spine of a closed journal, one of many, stacked neatly to the side. No titles, no labels, just thick pages, symbols, notes. Some in English, others in Serbo-Croatian. A few entirely in numbers. Each journal is a world, a version of the future. Most never came to be. He flips open one at random, a design for an earthquake machine. It hums in his mind like a metronome oscillator, the size of a loaf of bread that could shake a building to its knees. He tested it once discreetly in the basement of his New York lab. The floor had trembled, glass cracked, and people rushed into the street. He turned it off before it could collapse the block. Later, he smiled and said, "I could destroy the Empire State Building with 5 pounds of air pressure." He never tried again. He wasn't interested in destruction, just vibration, resonance, harmony. He believed everything in the universe had a frequency, and that matching, that frequency could produce miracles. His finger taps a steady beat on the desk, slow, intentional, as if testing the walls themselves for response. Then silence again. In the corner of the room sits a small wooden trunk, locked, always. Not because it holds valuables, but because it holds memory. Inside are letters from his mother, written in looping script, with words of encouragement and prayer. She was his first influence. She, too, was an inventor, though no one wrote her name in newspapers. She designed tools, looms, kitchen devices, soul-crafted by hand. She never had formal education. But Tesla always said she was the true genius in the family. He rises and walks to the trunk, not to open it, just to rest his hand there. The wood is worn smooth, like driftwood by the sea. It smells faintly of old paper, lavender, and dust. His mind drifts, not to childhood, but to later, to a hotel room in Colorado Springs, 1899. That summer, he built a massive coil, nearly 50 feet wide, capable of producing millions of volts. He made lightning dance across the sky, crackling arcs 20 feet long. The light could be seen for miles. Neighbors said the ground shook, that their boots sparked when walking across their carpets, that butterflies flew in confused circles, their wings magnetized. Tesla called it a controlled storm. But even storms must pass. Funding ran dry. The newspapers called him eccentric. Some said mad. He just kept building. The trunk beneath his fingers is still. He lets out a breath long, measured, quiet, then returns to the window. New York is fully awake now, though you'd hardly know it from this view. All he sees are rooftops, chimney smoke curling upward, the occasional pigeon sweeping low across the bricks. He smiles faintly. There was one pigeon pure white, with eyes brighter than pearls. She came to his window each morning, without fail, waited for him, watched him work. He once told a reporter, "I loved that bird." Yes, as a man loves a woman. She was comfort, connection. One day, she didn't come, and that morning felt colder than all the winters before. He never spoke of her again. He lets the curtain fall now. No need for the view. His lab is world enough. Beside his desk is a tray holding small brass spheres. Each one is a model of a different motor. Some spin when held to a magnet. Others hum when touched with alternating current. He lifts one gently, holding it to his ear, not to hear sound, but to feel weight, balance, precision. These were never toys. They were symphonies, and every line in the metal, every curve held meaning. He believed beauty and function should be the same. No wasted shapes, no excess, only purity of purpose. He places the sphere back on the tray with care. Then, for the first time in hours, he sits still, truly still. No scribbling, no testing, no reaching, just the faint hum of the world through the floorboards and the soft ticking of a clock that doesn't quite keep perfect time. It doesn't matter. For Tesla, time has always bent. He remembers ideas that never found form. He dreams of machines that vibrate to thought. He imagines towers that sing to planets. And somewhere within the walls, the coils still glow. They do not spark or roar, just glow, a steady, silent light, enough to see by, enough to believe in. Tesla doesn't sleep like other men, never has. He believes deep rest can be achieved in minutes, a kind of waking trance. 20 minutes here, half an hour there. He often naps upright in his chair, arms folded lightly, mind drifting just enough to loosen its grip on logic, but never fully surrendering. Tonight, he doesn't nap. He listens to the air, to the quiet hum of the past surrounding him, and to the ghosts, not of people necessarily, but of ideas. A whisper of a turbine he once dreamed might power entire cities with water alone. The soft flicker of an image, a transmitter taller than a church steeple, sending music, images, and voice across the world without wires. Wardenclyffe. That was its name, his greatest dream, and perhaps his greatest heartbreak. Built on Long Island soil, it was meant to be a global tower of energy broadcasting, free electricity to all. No wires, no walls. just the earth itself, pulsing with light. He had the blueprints, he had the tower, but he never had the trust of financiers who wanted profit, not promise. J.P. Morgan withdrew. Construction stopped. And eventually, it was torn down scrap metal and splinters where a revolution could have stood. Still, Tesla doesn't frown. Not now. He runs his fingers along the edge of a photo Wardenclyffe in its early days, rising into the sky like something pulled from myth. He remembers walking beneath it, hand to the steel, feeling the earth itself beneath his feet. He once said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." That tower was his tuning fork. The world just never heard the note. A carriage rattles by, outside, wheels over a cobblestone. A brief intrusion from the present. He waits for the sound to pass. Let silence return. On the desk lies a small velvet pouch. He opens it. Inside, a set of lenses cut from quartz, polished by hand. He lifts one to the light and sees the room bend and twist slightly. It's not distortion, it's revelation. He imagined goggles that could see energy as color, that could perceive magnetic fields, that might one day allow men to see thoughts forming in the brain. Not fantasy, just early steps. He sets the lens back down, carefully. In the far corner, a cabinet with dozens of small drawers, each labeled in tight, careful print. Copper, bismuth, quartz, iron shavings, mica dust. He pulls one open. Inside, a folded cloth holds a tiny, intricate coil, no larger than a thimble. He built it from memory. No plan, no diagram. He often said ideas came to him, whole images, so vivid he could turn them in his mind, adjust them, test them, all without touching a tool. His mind was the lab before the lab, and when he did build, it was already complete. No prototyping, no failure, just translation, from thought to form, from silence to sound. The window fogs slightly as a light rain begins to fall. Drops patter gently against the pane. Blurred city lights beyond, dancing like fireflies. Tesla leans his forehead to the glass. It's cool, smooth, the kind of cold that reminds you you're alive. He doesn't crave warmth, never has. He once said he could live without food, without friends, without rest, but never without work. Not ambition, not fame, just the work. The act of making, of understanding. He watches the rain, listens to it tap the sill like code-soft Morse from the sky. In his pocket is a small notebook, separate from the rest. He calls it his quiet book. Only observations go there, not equations, not theories, just moments. Tonight's entry, written hours ago. The pigeons did not come. The silence felt different, a colder kind of quiet. He closes the book, tucks it away, then lights another coil. Soft blue arcs jump across the air. No sound, but a faint static hiss, like wind through tall grass. He watches it dance, lets it speak. He doesn't write anything more. Some things don't need to be recorded. Some truths live in silence. There are stacks of letters beside the lab's oil lamps, unopened. Others read so many times the creases have worn soft. Many are invitations, some from admirers, a few from other scientists who oscillate between reverence and rivalry. But most are requests, dreams sent to him like prayers, asking if he might build a machine to speak with the dead, if he might heal the sick without touching them, or stop the weather from turning cruel. Tesla never laughs at them. He reads every word, carefully, methodically, because he understands something others often forget. Hope is the first component in invention. He sorts them quickly, setting aside a letter from a girl in Ohio who enclosed a drawing of a glowing house. She asks if he can make lights that never go out because she's afraid of the dark. He places the letter gently beneath a glass paperweight shaped like a dove. His mind pauses. Pigeons again. Not everyone knows, but those birds were not just companions. He believed they spoke to him not in words, but in emotion, in presence, in purity. He once said he loved one pigeon as a man loves a woman, and when she died, a light went out in his mind. He had seen it, a literal beam, vanishing into the dark. It wasn't poetry to him, it was reality. Tesla returns to the coils, the capacitors, the rotary spark gaps, sheaves humming like part of a strange cathedral. His inventions have always been music more than machinery. He used to listen for tones in every motor, in the rhythm of alternating current. At the world's Columbian Exposition in 1893, he illuminated over 100,000 lamps using AC power. People stared in awe, as if he'd captured lightning in his palms. What they didn't see was how alone he felt backstage, hands trembling, not from nerves, but because he hadn't eaten in nearly a day, too focused, too drawn into the maze of copper and light. Time in the lab has no rhythm. There is no clock that governs Tesla's movements. Sometimes he works for 36 hours straight. Sometimes he vanishes from public view for days, emerging only when an idea feels ripe. The human body, he believes, can be bent to match the tempo of the cosmos. One lives cleanly, avoids friction, avoids distractions of the flesh. He drinks only milk, eats mostly bread and honey, and walks exactly 8 miles a day. Obsessive, maybe, but to Tesla, every routine is a formula, every action a gear in a larger machine. The lab grows warm now. Not hot, but full. Full of current. The Van de Graaff generator sits silent in the corner, but its dome still holds a whisper of static. The air around it charged just enough to lift dust motes like snowflakes suspended in thought. Tesla moves past it, running his hand an inch above the surface, feeling, not touching. He's always said that real energy doesn't need to be forced. It arrives when invited, when coaxed, when listened to. On the wall, a black and white photo of his mother remains framed in modest oak. Georgina, she never had formal schooling, but Tesla swore she had a mechanical mind. She could craft complex household tools from scraps, and he credits her with his earliest inspiration. She used to hum while she worked low, droning melodies that reminded him of magnetic hum. Her voice became the backdrop to his childhood dreams, and now, years later, the sound memory of her humming returns in moments of clarity. Tonight, it hums faintly again, though the room remains still. He stares into the quiet flame of the oil lamp, watching the way shadows bend across the floor. So many of his theories have involved light, how it moves, how it pulses, how it carries. He has dreams of photographing thoughts, of projecting moving pictures into the air, of bathing entire cities in violet rays to cleanse and energize them. People called these ideas madness, but he never cared for their approval. He only cared that they worked. Outside, thunder rumbles faintly, not near, but not far. Spatters again against the sill. He closes his eyes and remembers Colorado Springs, where he once summoned bolts of lightning 20 feet long from his own coils. Townspeople reported sparks jumping from taps, the ground humming beneath their boots. He burned out the local power station more than once, but within the storm he called forth, he also captured data that no one else had. The earth itself, he believed, vibrated at a natural frequency, and if one could tune into it, one could send power, voice, even thought across continents. He opens his notebook, writes a single line. The silence between storms is when real work begins. Then he puts down the pen. The machines are off now, but the room is alive. The room no longer feels like a space made of brick and wood. It feels like a vessel suspended between time and matter. Tesla walks slowly to the far wall, where blueprints are pinned like constellations, some torn, some faded, some penciled in with notes so light they can only be read at an angle. One sketch shows a wireless tower reaching toward the clouds. Wardenclyffe, his grandest experiment, his downfall, the unfinished dream. It was meant to beam electricity into the air. No wires, no limits, power for the planet, light for every home. But financiers like J.P. Morgan had no interest in free energy. What profit could be made from a machine that gave everything away. They pulled funding, and the tower was dismantled piece by piece. The dream collapsing, not with a crash, but with the quiet grief of being unheard. Tesla didn't cry. He didn't rage. He simply retreated deeper into silence, not out of weakness, but out of reverence for the idea that still burned inside him. He never stopped believing in the wireless future. Even in the final years, when others mocked his eccentricities, he knew the earth itself was still humming, and he was still listening. He steps closer to one of his favorite devices, a small, polished bronze oscillator that hums when touched. He places 2 fingers gently on its housing and feels a low vibration, not strong, but unmistakable. The kind that resonates more in the bones than the ears. He had once told a reporter that he could, with the right frequency, bring down buildings using only a pocket-sized oscillator. People laughed. But they didn't laugh when it cracked the foundation of his own lab. Still, Tesla was no destroyer. He believed in balance, in symmetry, in the healing potential of energy. He once experimented with high-frequency currents on himself, claiming it revitalized his body and cleared his thoughts. At a time when electricity was believed to be dangerous, unpredictable, Wild he embraced it like a friend. He showed the world it could be tamed, not by force, but by understanding. His fingers traced the edge of the oscillator once more, then drift to a small drawer filled with quartz crystals. Not for decoration, these were tuning tools. Tesla believed crystals held unique vibrational properties. He used them in his oscillators, his resonant circuits. He even believed they could be used to detect signals from other planets. When asked if he truly thought life existed beyond Earth, he replied simply, "The universe is alive in ways we do not yet comprehend." He gazes again toward the window. Outside, the street lamps flicker. New York doesn't sleep, but it pauses. Somewhere beyond those buildings, pigeons are roosting. The rain has stopped, and in its place hangs the smell of ozone, sharp, electric, promising. The lamp's flame dances quietly. In its glow, the framed photo of Mark Twain catches his eye. Twain, one of the few who understood Tesla's humor, his melancholy, his fire. The two had spent long evenings in this very room, talking of stars and stories, of inventions and illusions. Twain once held a device in his hands that made his entire skeleton vibrate and burst into laughter. It was the only time Tesla saw him genuinely lose control. That memory still makes him smile. He walks over to a set of notebooks stacked on a shelf, each one labeled in fine script, dates written with precision. They are memory palaces, inventions that were never built, equations only he understood. poems to electricity hidden among the pages. He believed his mind was a transmitter, and that ideas were not born from thought, but received from the cosmos. He merely tuned himself to the right frequency. Tonight, he opens a notebook from 1899. Inside is a schematic for a device no one has ever replicated, a thought recorder. He had once dreamed of building a machine capable of capturing the vibrations of the mind, rendering imagination visible, thought into image. Laughable, perhaps, but in a world where radio and radar seemed impossible only years before, who was to say what limits truly existed? He runs a hand over the page. The ink has faded, but the intention has not. He closes the book gently, as if tucking a child to sleep. His fingers linger on the cover of that notebook, its leather soft from decades of use. Then he returns it to the shelf and moves toward the lab table where coils lie dormant, copper wound tightly like sleeping serpents. With a flick of a small switch, the Tesla coil awakens. A faint hum, a whisper of violet light curling at its tip. He doesn't need a full discharge, just a pulse enough to feel it. Years ago, in Colorado Springs, the same coils grew to monstrous size. He generated 3 million volts and sent arcs of lightning crackling 60 feet across the lab. Locals said they saw sparks leaping from the ground, felt metal fences humming under their fingers. He once lit bulbs buried in the dirt wirelessly, and he believed it could scale an entire gritless world. He could taste it, but the vision always outpaced the money. Always, Morgan, Westinghouse, even Edison, they played the game of control. Tesla did not. Genius without fortune is inconvenient. So is humility. And Tesla, despite what they wrote, was humble. He slept little, ate simply, mostly bread and milk, often alone, seated with birds rather than people. He once claimed his eyesight improved with age, able to see particles of air and vibrations others couldn't, whether true or symbolic. It shows how fully his world was attuned to subtlety, to things most overlooked. The violet arcs dance for a moment more, then fade into quiet. He switches the coil off, and the hum dissolves into stillness. The air tingles faintly. He walks toward the far cabinet, unlocking it with a brass key. Inside are fragments of inventions that never made it to Mark 10, early prototype of a bladeless turbine, smooth and compact. A cylindrical vacuum chamber for wireless lighting. A small receiver meant to pick up unknown frequencies. One drawer contains dozens of tuning forks, arranged by frequency. Another holds glass tubes, some faintly glowing with a residue of noble gases. Tesla picks up one, holds it near the lamp. The tube glows softly. Neon, a gas he helped make famous. Before neon signs were symbols of nightlife, they were lab curiosities. Tesla saw beauty in their shimmer, a language of color and charge. Even now, he watches it as one might watch fireflies, quietly, reverently. On a nearby shelf is a metal egg, brass, slightly scuffed, perfectly smooth. It was part of his rotating magnetic field demonstration. Placed on a spinning plate, the egg would stand upright and spin, wobbling slightly like a planet finding its axis. Children gasped. Adults stared in disbelief. It was meant to explain alternating current, how invisible forces could create motion, order, balance. A lesson dressed as a trick. He smiles at the memory, sets the egg back, and lets the silence settle in again. The gas lamp flickers once, a subtle reminder of the outside world's imperfection. Tesla adjusts the wick, then places a piece of paper under a magnifying lens. It's covered in tight, looping handwriting, his own. Note on resonance, drawn years ago when he believed he could split the earth with vibration alone. And perhaps, in theory, he could. In Colorado Springs, he built a mechanical oscillator so precisely tuned it caused nearby buildings to tremble. One story says the police came, worried it was an earthquake. Tesla quietly dismantled the device and smiled. "Give me a base and I will shake the world," he once paraphrased Archimedes. But, unlike conquerors, he sought no empire. He wanted understanding, harmony. The room is warm now, a pocket of calm, surrounded by the sleeping city. Snowflakes kiss the window pane, catching the lamplight. Tesla scribbles another line in the margin, some revision to a frequency equation, some correction no one else might notice. But he notices. In his drawer, he retrieves a small square of silk wrapped carefully. Inside is a feather from a white pigeon. Not just any pigeon, but the one. The bird who visited him daily, perched at his window, even in storms, eyes like pale opals. He said he loved that bird, that when she died, a light left the world. Tesla never married. He avoided attachments of most kinds. But the pigeon she was different. In a life of equations and machines, she was the one creature who asked nothing of him but presence, a quiet, shared silence. Her wings softer than any laboratory noise. He sets the feather beside the coil and watches it for a long moment. Above the laboratory, the clouds clear. Moonlight spills over the rooftops. Somewhere, a clock tower chimes, distant, muffled. Midnight. The coil still warm. He leans back into his chair. Not to sleep, not yet, but to think. About the papers he wrote, but never published. About the inventions that died in drawers. And yet, none of it was wasted. Even unlit bulbs remember the spark. He picks up a brass gear from the workbench no larger than a coin. Not from one of his devices, but a keepsake from a clockmaker he once knew. They met only once, but the man said something Tesla never forgot. Time is not a ruler, it is a rhythm. And in many ways, Tesla lived by that ideal, less by calendar and more by cadence. The rise and fall of thought, the pulse of invention, the long inhale before a breakthrough. Outside, the city dozes beneath a blanket of coal, smoke, and snow. The streets are slick, the rooftops quiet. Somewhere, far below, a newsboy snores against a wall, cradling unread papers. The world waits to wake. Tesla does not. Sleep is a fragile luxury to him, one he rarely courts. He believes dreams come better when waking, more vivid, more controlled. He often sees images so clearly, blueprints in motion, machines unfolding in his mind with all the precision of an engineer's drawing. He claims he could build from memory alone, and more than once he proved it. In his hands now is a small diagram-n idea for a bladeless turbine. Elegant, nearly silent, inspired not by mechanics, but by water's behavior in nature. He believed the world's greatest lessons were taught by the earth itself, by the fall of rivers, the spin of planets, the arch of lightning in the sky. He folds the diagram and slides it into an envelope. There are stacks of them now, designs never manufactured, letters never sent, others to scientists, a few to no one in particular, just thoughts preserved on paper, waiting for someone to understand them. He once said, "The future will evaluate each of us." And perhaps he knew that he was building not for today, but for a century yet to come. A hum returns to the room. The coil, warm again. And beside it, the feather still resting. Tesla glances at it as though it had spoken. Perhaps it did. Morning is still a long way off, but the edges of the night are softening. Tesla stands by the window, tall and thin as a shadow. His long fingers rest on the glass, tracing the arc of frost creeping inward. He does not shiver. His body has long been trained to ignore such things. Comfort was never a priority, clarity was. From here, he can see the outline of the park where he once fed the pigeons. Their wings, white and silver, still rise in his memory like snow lifting on wind. He said once that his ideas flew to him in moments of stillness, and perhaps the birds carried some of them, delivered from sky to mind in one quiet motion. He turns, walks slowly across the room, and dims the lamp. The blue glow from the coil remains subtle, barely there, like moonlight submerged in water. His eyes linger on it. It doesn't need to flash or crackle. Just being is enough. It proves the principle. Tesla sits again, picking up an old journal. He thumbs through the pages. Some are filled with formulas, others sketches. But near the end, he finds a page with only one line, written in delicate, looping script. Everything that lives is light. He reads it twice, then closes the journal with care. Behind him, the coil fades. Not off, just resting. He places the pigeon feather inside the journal before sliding it onto the shelf beside dozens like it. Then, with a sigh that is more breath than sound, he folds his hands and closes his eyes, not to dream, not to sleep, but to think one last quiet thought, floating like static through the air. What will they remember? The machines, the silence, or the man who loved lightning but whispered to pigeons? And as dawn begins to color the city in slow, smoky gold, ... a soft spark lingers behind in the lab, waiting, still warm, still humming, still alive, just like him, just like light.